Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. This show is about Plymouth County real estate. Our headline for the month was Spring Market Begins with Mixed Messages, and you'll see those in the numbers as we go forward. I have a great guest in the second segment of the show, Bill Keohan, the Community Preservation Chair in the town of Plymouth. And we'll talk a little bit about the role of the Community Preservation Act, and then we'll go to some of our great county and colony history. You're going to see a shot of the deeds for the month. There were 725 deeds recorded in March, more than the 555 deeds recorded in February, 10% less than last year. Year to date, we're down 7%. We're coming off a year, 2021, when we recorded more documents in 2021 than any other year at the registry all the way back to 2005. So we're going to see drops as we go forward. The next image you're going to see is a listing of the sales from every one of our 27 communities, from Abington to Whitman. So Plymouth and BROCKTON are number one and number two in terms of sales of property across the county. And you can see January, February, March sales during that time period. We're going to move on to a bar chart of mortgages. Now, mortgages are where we've had the most impact, because with mortgages, a lot of the mortgages over the past couple of years have been refinances, and a lot of those refinances have dropped off with a slight increase in the mortgage rate. There were 2,158 mortgages recorded in March, more than February 1747, however, 48% less than March of 2021. And even year to date in those 3 months, we're down 48% in mortgages. There's still a lot of people using mortgages to buy homes, but it's the actual people that are refinancing to bring down the time they actually pay their mortgages, is not happening as much as it did in 2021. We always follow foreclosure issues very closely. Foreclosure deeds are when a lender actually takes back property from someone. Because there was a foreclosure moratorium in place during the COVID restrictions, these numbers are still very low. There are only 8 foreclosure deeds in March, a little less than the 9 in February. However, they're starting to creep up, 60% more than the 6 in March of 21 and 22% higher year to date. A number to watch very closely are the foreclosure notices, because a foreclosure notice is the first document we receive at the registry that shows someone's in trouble. If you're in trouble and having difficulty paying your mortgage, reach out to a federal housing counselor to try to have a modification of your loan so you can stay in your home. It's a very traumatic experience to lose your home. There were 39 foreclosure notices in March compared to 35 in February. And there were 117 more foreclosure notices than in March 17, again, because of the moratorium. I'm also going to bring up a listing of foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices for all of the 27 communities in Plymouth County, from Abington down to Whitman. BROCKTON has traditionally been the highest number of foreclosure deeds. Actually, in the month of March, it was Pembroke, and you can see all the numbers on the right. And if those aren't taken care of, those orders and notices Those are really foreclosure deeds in progress. We're going to talk with my guest in the second segment about the Community Preservation Act. The town of Lakeville just adopted the CPA over the past month. And I also like to warn people about things they may get in the mail of a fraudulent nature. There's a company out there it's called the Home Warranty Division, trying to get people to pay for their land records. You can get a copy of your deed for $1 a page at our Plymouth, BROCKTON, or Rockland office, or if you go online, you can find a way to get it very easily. Something we advise people to have because it should be part of your portfolio with your wills and your powers of attorney and all those issues to have a copy of your current deed. I have a great guest coming up in the second segment, Bill Keohan. Again, he's a private realtor, but he's the chair of the Plymouth Community Preservation Act Committee. He'll be talking about the act and the great success in the town of Plymouth over the 20 years that it's been in place. So we'll see you in the next segment. Welcome back to the Register's Report. This segment of the show is always educational in nature. We've had surveyors, appraisers, many people involved in the real estate community, which of course means a lot of realtors. But today I have a special guest who's both a realtor and very active in his community and chairman of the local Community Preservation Act Committee, Bill Keohan.
Thank you, John.
Welcome back, Bill. You've been on this show before.
Yes.
I think it'd be great if you could tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you do for primary living and how you volunteer for this opportunity in Plymouth.
Well, I grew up in Plymouth. I went to school in Plymouth, and after going to college and having some opportunity to live abroad and live in Washington, I came back to Plymouth. And one of the things I got involved in on a very local level, I had seen the town of Plymouth in my lifetime change dramatically. I saw open space being depleted. I saw historical landmarks being altered. And I didn't see a diversity of housing in the town of Plymouth. I had a unique opportunity when I was in Washington to work for a gentleman called Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan out of New York. Now, Senator Moynihan was one of the leading preservationists in Washington. He was always involved. He was instrumental in preserving the Grand Central Station in New York. And as I worked for him by osmosis, I learned this idea of building a stronger community by preserving some of the best attributes. So one day we were I was reading the newspaper, and I saw that the governor had signed into law the Community Preservation Act in the year 2000. And I read about the act, and I said, gee, that's what Moynihan used to always talk about. These are the things that we should be working on preserving. So myself and a few other people went out and we got signatures, and we formed a committee. We got it on the ballot. And in 2002, there was an election because you had to adopt the Community Preservation Act in your town. So we had an election, we put up signs, we had phone banks, we did a mailing, and we passed the Community Preservation Act. And that was on May 11th, 2002. We're entering into the 20th anniversary of the Community Preservation Act this year, 2022.
So I think I mentioned to you earlier in the show, gradually over time, there have been more communities within Plymouth County that have adopted the CPA. As recently as last week, the town of Lakeville adopted it, and they adopted it with the 1% model. There's only 4 communities left in all of Plymouth County that do not have it as part of their revenue stream and ability to do CPA projects. And I hope these other communities at least put it on the ballot for people to consider. But I know Plymouth is well recognized as being a model for CPA in the county. You were one of the first. I think you said you were the second in Plymouth County after Duxbury. And that's incredible with the work that you have done. And clearly, we have a connection at the Registry of Deeds with the community preservation because there is a surcharge that we collect on all documents recorded at the registry, surcharges which have increased, by the way. And we collect it every month. We send it off to the state office, and they will distribute it to the communities as a reimbursement compared to what you've taken in at your local tax level.
Yeah.
You want to just quickly describe that the town has a tax
Yeah.
portion of it?
So the town of Plymouth adopted the Community Preservation Act at 1.5%. We could have gone as high as 3,
Right.
but we wanted to make it affordable for the residents of Plymouth. And with that, we bring in close to $2 million a year. Bring in $1 million in tax in year here in Plymouth, and then it's matched by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts by this trust fund that you just spoke of. Because all across the Commonwealth, in every registry of deeds, every time someone buys a home or refinances, a fee is collected called the Community Preservation Act fee, and the Commonwealth maintains that fund and gives that fund out to towns that adopt the CPA. So if you're not a CPA town, they're taking taxes out of your town and they're going to other towns to help them with housing and historical and open space. So that was one of the driving forces, because we were there in Plymouth and we were under this great strain, and we saw other towns taking the money out of Plymouth for their town. So we wanted to get our match back to Plymouth, and that was the intent. But we wanted to make it affordable for the taxpayer in Plymouth, so we kept it at 1.5%. And we have utilized that fund now for 20 years in Plymouth. And one of the most important things about the CPA is not just your town adopting it, but every other town in the Commonwealth adopting it. It's 351 towns. The more towns that adopt the CPA, the more state representatives and state senators have the CPA in their district. Now they're fighting for it on Beacon Hill, protecting it, because there has been attempts to minimize it or direct the funds somewhere else. Luckily here in Plymouth, our state delegation has been diligent to make sure that didn't happen. And I think it has a lot to do with that a vast majority of the towns they represent have CPAs in their town, and they see the work that's going on. In the early years of the CPA, we worked with Kingston to help them pass it. We worked with Carver. We actually went on the road and helped other towns around us because we knew this was a regional effort.
So I know there's the money that is collected locally within the town. There is the money you get from the statewide pool that comes a lot from the surcharges that we send in to the state. And in many cases, when the legislature has extra money, they've appropriated directly into the CPA fund, which they did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so there's been years where the CPA fund is doing really well because people are buying homes and people are refinancing. And then some years the fund does drop, but the state has seen opportunities to level the fund by directly addressing that. So those have been beneficial to the town. But one of the things that we've been doing that we learned over the 20 years in Plymouth with the Community Preservation Act is partnering with different departments within Town Hall. We have here in Plymouth the Office of Marine Environmental Affairs. This is an office that goes after federal and state grants to rebuild fishways and waterways and in open space, buying open space to protect wells. There's a lot of money out there on the state and federal level, and if you have a department that is proficient at going after these grants, that is a great benefit to the Community Preservation Act, because if you look at the CPA and its implementation, yes, we're collecting revenue locally, we're getting state funding, and then we're going after federal and state grants on top of that. So it maximizes the effect of the CPA. Recently, the town of Plymouth has seen the benefits of grant writing and has hired a grant writer to coordinate grant writing across the town of Plymouth. So the CPA has shown something over the last 20 years to the town that we can really attract funding by grant writing.
So we do a letter every year after the year is over for the amount of surcharges we collected per community. Sometimes that's been an incentive to communities that haven't adopted the CPA to realize they're leaving money on the table and have subsequently adopted the CPA. In this year, 2021, the last full year, there was $1 million in surcharges that Plymouth collected. The second highest in the county was Brockton, which was about $800,000 in surcharges, and Brockton didn't get the money. It went off into the pool because they haven't adopted the CPA. So there are clearly some messages there. Leaving money on the table.
Yeah, leaving money on the table. Some people think, well, that leaves more money in the trust fund for higher matches across the state to the towns that do have it.
And it does.
It does. But I reach out to our friends in Brockton, and I advocate that Brockton is a beautiful city with great history and beautiful parks and a need for affordable housing. And if the CPA was meant for a town, not only was it meant for Plymouth, but it was meant for Brockton. Hopefully Brockton will adopt it in the near future.
Yeah, I personally think that every town at least ought to put it before the voters to let the voters decide what they want to do. So let's talk about your 20th anniversary. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, so this year will be the 20th anniversary of the Community Preservation Act. About 5 years ago, we put out a publication, and it was a culmination of all the CPA acquisitions from 2002 to about 2016. This is a publication that we put out
I remember that. That was very nice.
Yeah, what we tried to do was categorize each of the subject matters of housing, historical, and open space, and then we sorted it by town meeting. So every town meeting, fall and spring, we have these recommendations. So what we did is we went back over 20 years and we started taking all of the records from our town meetings and then putting descriptions about each article and maybe a picture of that acquisition. We did that right up until 2016. And now that we are looking at the 20th anniversary, we're putting out another publication, which is a culmination of all 20 years. It's a book that you'll be able to go to and look up by town meeting, by subject matter, that specific article in a description of it. And I think that is helpful to the residents. Some of the articles we have pictures because they're kind of an interesting story. I always get a kick out of Center Hill Preserve in southern Plymouth. It was a half-mile of beach and 130 acres on the coast with a pond and uplands, a beach and dunes, a very unique parcel of land. It was one of the largest undeveloped parcels left on Cape Cod Bay. And in 2005, the Jocelyn Diabetes Foundation owned this property. They had run a camp there, and it had run its course. We noticed some flags going up in the woods, some engineering flags. And we also noticed, we were working with the Open Space Committee, we had a report that told us that the town of Plymouth should focus on land acquisitions to connect its ocean with its forests. And in the southern section, by Ellisville Harbor, they identified this piece of land as a priority acquisition. We were sending out letters trying to entice people who own the land. We didn't hear from them. And then a gentleman, Scott McFadden, at the Wildlands Trust of Southeastern Massachusetts, we were talking on the phone, and he says, I'll give them a call. And when he gave them a call, we learned that the Jocelyn Diabetes Foundation, in the next 48 hours, was going to accept sale bids on the property and sell it. We scrambled and had an emergency meeting of the Open Space Committee and the CPC. We put in a recommendation to pay the $1.5 million for the Center Hill Preserve East. There were 2 acquisitions that we were involved in. And we went to the town of Plymouth and we had a letter saying that we could acquire the property. And we went in and went to this meeting and made our offer known contingent on a vote of town meeting. And we went home. I didn't think we were going to get in the door. I thought that maybe some developer might get the Center Hill Preserve, and I was driving down a road in Plymouth and my phone rang and I pulled over. I remember exactly where I was. I was at the entrance of Morton Park and the phone rang, and it was the real estate firm for Jocelyn Diabetes saying that they would sell it to the town of Plymouth. So that was very exciting. Most of their acquisitions are just by happenstance or luck, but a lot of this is in the publication, and we'll release it on May 11, 2022 at the 1820 Courthouse. We're going to have a reception and release the book, and there'll be other stories like that in the book talking about the acquisitions when it comes to housing, historical, and open space.
So can you identify the categories that are allowed under CPA spending?
Yes. So we have historical. That's where you can use the CPA money for restoring and protecting historical landmarks in the town of Plymouth, like we did with the 1820 Courthouse and the 1749 Courthouse. And then there's open space, where we can protect land for active and passive recreational usage. Like active would be like Hedges Pond Preserve. That's a playground with a beach with a summer program, but it's also a forest that's preserved. So we have both active recreational and passive recreational. Some of the passive recreational is mostly about land preservation and habitat preservation. And then we do affordable housing, where we're looking at different demographics within the community, from emergency housing for people that have lost their homes and need to find congregate living in an emergency situation, to workforce housing, where people are looking to buy their house for the first time, they're working in Plymouth and trying to make the house more affordable. So we look at housing on a multitude of levels. We've worked with different agencies, from the Plymouth Housing Authority to the Task Force to End Homelessness, to veterans organizations. So it's very interesting how the CPA puts a town in position to work with such organizations, from historical to environmental to housing. And in the act of interacting with these nonprofits, the town grows in its dialogue and its communication within the community itself. So the CPA acts as a strengthening mechanisms for municipalities to partner up locally. And meanwhile, like I said before, the real power of the Community Preservation Act is when you go and apply for a grant and you are indicating that you're putting money down, you attract federal and state funding to your project and makes the town more successful writing grants for these purposes.
Do you have a statewide organization that you share ideas?
Yes, there is an organization called the Community Preservation Coalition.
Okay.
They are in Boston, and their intention is to help spread the Community Preservation Act and work on Beacon Hill to protect it at times.
So I think your presentation on the 11th is a great opportunity for anyone in town to go see what you're doing. I know the show is going to be seen by the people of Pembroke, Kingston, and Duxbury. And even if they were interested in hearing from you, the projects that Plymouth's done, and that booklet I know I've shared in the past with communities that later adopted it, I think that's a great opportunity for people. Before we run out of time here, I know we could spend hours on these stories. I always say that it's nice to have a loquacious guest because I never have to pull information out of them. Sometimes I find filling my time with people, I have to ask questions over and over again. You're very, very good at telling your story. So why don't you share with the public your contact information? First, as a chairman of the CPA.
Yeah, so you can contact the Community Preservation Committee. That's the entity in the town of Plymouth that administers the Community Preservation Act. You can contact them by phone at 508-747-1620, or you can contact myself at 508-789-5012. And that's how you contact the Community Preservation Act. That's you can also, both numbers reach me.
But as a volunteer, you also have to do something to keep the lights on. You want to share that contact information.
Well, yes, I'm a realtor. I work in commercial residential real estate. It's fun to be someone in a very historic area working on housing. So you can reach me there on 508-789-5012. But just I opened up and spoke briefly about Senator Moynihan and his passion for preservation. And
Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen. So it was a very interesting. I did have a chance to run into his wife years later, and I told her that in Plymouth, Massachusetts, after working for her husband, Senator Moynihan, I learned the importance of preservation. And when I came back to Plymouth, we passed the Community Preservation Act. And I don't think I ever would have done anything like that or put myself into it for 20 years if I hadn't learned the importance of these attributes of our community. And I learned them through working for Senator Moynihan. And I told Liz Moynihan, who grew up in Cohasset actually, I told her this story, and I told her, I said, there's a little bit of Pat Moynihan in Plymouth, because I would never have done that if I had not worked for him. This idea of preserving the best attributes to a community can build a stronger community.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, John.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. Again, my name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. And Bill Keohan was a great guest on the show, talking about the purpose of the Community Preservation Act, talking about all the different projects that Plymouth has done, and their great celebration coming up that I think everyone will enjoy. And I know it'll be taped on PAC TV and be shared. The information will be shared to talk about all the things that Plymouth has accomplished over the years of the Community Preservation Act. So in this segment of the show, we talk about Holidays for the month: April Fool's Day was the 1st, National Beer Day the 7th, Palm Sunday was the 12th, Good Friday is today, taping the show, Passover started Friday, ends Saturday, Easter on the 17th, Tax Day on the 19th, Earth Day on the 22nd, Arbor Day on the 29th. Those are all great holidays. And on this show, we talk about a couple of notable land records. We have a collection of notable land records of famous people and places, and we always try to connect them to the month. This particular one, the first one coming up, is an image of Herbert Warren Wind. Herbert Warren Wind lived in Brockton. He loved playing golf. He was a member of Thorny Lee Golf Course in Brockton, and he went on to become one of the world's most famous golf writers. He wrote for both Sports Illustrated and the New Yorker, and he actually covered the Masters, which was just completed. So the Augusta National Golf Course and the Masters is one of the great rites of spring to watch that. And he followed Arnold Palmer around in the 1958 Masters, and when he got to the 11th, 12th, and 13th hole, he named them Amen Corner. Every year when you watch the Masters, the announcers at the time will talk about Herbert Warren Wind and talk about Amen Corner and the beauty of that place. Everyone thinks it was named after a prayer because of what they had done, Arnold Palmer had done to win the tournament that year, but it was actually named after a famous jazz song called Amen Corner. Herbert Warren Wind was a great fan of jazz. His picture is inside the clubhouse in Augusta to recognize his role he is. He's the only non-golfer who has a picture within that clubhouse. The next one I'm going to show is Dominic DiMaggio. We are well into the baseball season. I mean, well meaning past the strike time and into the opening day here, even in Boston. There have been some games played on the road. But I originally put this in because the Red Sox started the season playing the dreaded Yankees, and everyone will remember with the Yankees, one of their best players of all time was Joe DiMaggio. He's in Cooperstown. He's probably the icon of baseball in New York City for the Yankees. But he had a brother that ended up living in Plymouth County, Dominic. Dominic actually played for the competitor Red Sox team. He was a Boston center fielder. He's in the Red Sox Hall of Fame, and he was named 7 times to the American League All-Stars. His nickname was the Little Professor because he wore spectacles. Not many people wore glasses at the time where they played. But anyways, he was a great center fielder and hitter, and he played with the wonderful Ted Williams, who we're going to talk about in a minute. So when Dominic and his wife retired, they moved to the town of Marion in Plymouth County. They're very well known in town and certainly part of Red Sox history, and we also have entered them into Plymouth County history. And last but not least, from the county notable records is Ted Williams. So Ted Williams, in many people's minds, certainly mine, was the best baseball player that ever played for the Boston Red Sox, and certainly one of the best of all time. He was named to Cooperstown, and he's a member of the Sports Illustrated All-Star team. He was the American League most valuable player. And interestingly enough, his career was interrupted when he became a fighter pilot in World War II. And then he came back and was just as good as when he left. A lot of people's talent dissipate after they've been gone for a while. But Ted Williams' role in our records is that Ted Williams actually operated a baseball camp down in Lakeville. He loved fishing. That was his favorite pastime after baseball, fish in Florida. And he actually fished the ponds of Lakeville when he was down there during the baseball camp. Currently, the Lakeville Senior Center is located on the camp, and the pond immediately adjacent to it, Loon Pond, was one of the many places where Ted Williams fished. And last but not least in our history is a colony record. We were involved with Plymouth 400 in telling the stories of the Plymouth Colony records. There is a Plymouth Colony record, and we thought it was important to bring it forward this month. It relates to what is going on in our communities, town elections, town meetings. The colonial court in 1658, 350 years ago, voted that 3 or 5 select men only, spelled with a C, select, would be voted by the townsmen. And that was in the Book of Laws, Part 2, page 88, in the records of 1658. So I want to thank the folks here at PAC TV for bringing me back on the show. It's been a little break because of COVID, but it's always tremendous to be here. I see all the great improvements to the studio. It's really been great to be here. I want to thank Donna, Dave, and Chris for helping me with the show. I want to thank Christine Baker-Richards and Lorna Green-Baker from our office to help me put the show together. And I want to wish everybody a very happy Easter. By the time you see this, you will have had a happy Easter and have a great spring, and we'll see you next month.